What's up, my friends? Welcome back. I just did a little behind the ear hair tuck thing. Being very sassy. So this episode is going to be an interesting one. It's been highly requested. Hold on. I forgot to look this up prior to. So this is one of those listener requested episodes. This is requested by, hold on. I have to remember.
Are we using his
alias?
His alias?
This was requested by...
You said it to me earlier.
Requested by Nighthawk.
Nighthawk. That's it. Okay. So who are we talking about?
So we're gonna come at you with a little bit of some information about this fella by the name of Aleister Crowley. Crowley.
You say You've been saying Crowley. I've been saying Crowley. So I'm gonna stick with Crowley.
Okay, I like it.
I'm not a theologian. It's fine
because it makes me think of Supernatural.
But
I'm just gonna put this disclaimer out there. He came at me and was like, "Y'all need to talk about this person," and I'm like,
"Never heard that name.
Never heard that name." I played it off like I totally knew what he was talking about when he first mentioned it, and I was like, "Yeah, that would be cool." And I was like, I'll throw that idea out there, and
then she told me, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, he's on my to-do list."
I'm just here to let y'all know. Still, to this very second, I do not know jack shit about this person.
You know a little bit.
I mean, I know what I researched.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I know. I'm doing the early area of his life, the early stages of his life. Okay.
His like young childhood.
I'm just that's all I researched. So the information, because I was told that this is a very interesting story.
Yeah.
So that y'all are going to get my raw reaction. This is the first time I'm hearing any of this because I feel like it was warranted. I have not read anything that Brittany
and I've got 10 pages.
Yeah. So, and I've got like 2.
Okay. So where are we starting?
So, Aleister Crowley was born under the name Edward Alexander Crowley on October 12th of 1875 in Warwickshire. What the ever? See?
I'm an Anglophile, so...
Well, and that's in England. Mm-hmm. His parents were very religious people in the Christian faith. In fact, his father was an evangelist for the Plymouth Brethren, which was a nonconformist religious denomination. At the age of just over 4 years old, Crowley suffered his first loss of family as his baby sister, and what would be his only sibling, was born and died 5 hours later on February 12th of 1880. Little did he know that would not be the only loss that his family suffered before he reached adult age. On March 5th of 1887, his father died.
And his father had tongue cancer.
That's...
Sounds horrible.
Yeah. And that's not like a super common thing. Like, you never hear of that. Mm-mm. As a young man, he found a love for climbing. And I'm just here to tell you, when we discussed that we were going to do this episode.
Yeah.
Brittany said, "Here, I found this timeline. We're going to use this timeline." And I was like, okay, cool. And so when I sat down to write this episode, I looked at timeline. And it's literally like, this month of this year, he climbed this mountain, this mountain, this mountain, this mountain, this mountain. Like,
yeah,
insane. And I was like, this is ridiculous. But I
don't think you have it, like how he discovered this.
No.
Okay. So when he was 11 years old is when his dad died. And the conditions that they were living in, he was pretty sick as a kid. So, and his doctor was like, if nothing changes, he only has months to live. So his uncle came into the picture and was like, oh, he needs fresh air. And so young little Edward went to live with his uncle, where he was able to go hiking and run in the forest. And this fun was just a foreign concept to him up to that point. So his uncle brought him to pubs and allowed him to drink underage, and even paid for a prostitute at the age of 15. Yeah. His uncle said that he wanted him to have great experiences with what time he had left, since his doctor said he had only mere months to live. But his health fully recovered, and he was sent back to live with his dear old mom.
Nice. So we're going to rewind a little bit, maybe. No, probably not. So, I said that he liked to climb. He climbed an insane amount of mountains throughout his life.
True.
For instance, in June of 1893, he climbed a total of 18 mountains in just that 1 month.
Yeah.
18 mountains in the Lake District of Northwest England, totaling around 15,332 meters.
Yeah.
In January of 1894, he began a 7-month run at Eastbourne College in East Sussex. It was there that he took over the chess club under the pen name, I'm going to spell it because I don't know how to say it, Dhuibh. That's a lot of consonants.
Yeah.
He was also the editor for the chess column that appeared every Wednesday in the Eastbourne Gazette called Chess Notes. This would be his first publications. On March 3rd of 1894, he led the club to their first victory, which culminated in his first ever published limerick, commencing with, "There was a smart chess club at Eastbourne." He was so great at chess that on April 13th of that same year, he found himself in a match with the famous English chess master Joseph Blackburn, who proposed a draw, in which he accepted. He left that chess club in August of 1894 to pursue more mountain climbing in the Swiss, Italian, and Austrian Alps. He was voted into the Scottish Mountaineering Club on December 7th, boasting all of his many ascents so far. Crowley didn't stop the climbing there, of course. However, in 1895, he enrolled at Trinity College in Cambridge and represented the university at chess in 1896 and 1897. It was there that he began to use the name Aleister. He explained why he shed his birth name in his autobiography. And this seemed to lay out like an eerie feeling of all that his future would hold with, in his adult decisions and whatnot. Mm. He said, "For many years, I loathed being called Alec, partly because of the unpleasant sound and sight of the word, partly because it was the name by which my mother called me. Edward did not seem to suit me, and the diminutives, Ted or Ned, were even less appropriate. Alexander was too long, and Sandy suggested tow hair and freckles. I had read in some book or other that the most favorable name for becoming famous was one consisting of a dactyl followed by a spondy. As at the end of hexameter, I'm struggling, guys. Like Jeremy Taylor. Aleister Crowley fulfilled these conditions, and Aleister is the Gaelic for Alexander. To adopt it would satisfy my romantic ideals. He left that university in 1898 with no degree. It was then that he was free to travel and have his writings published. His first book of poetry was released in 1898. In 1902, he joined an expedition to climb the second highest mountain on Earth, K2, and reached the elevation of 18,600 feet. 3 years later, he found himself amidst a tragedy when he joined yet another expedition to climb Is it?
Hold on. I'm looking for it because I do have a little bit on it.
I have like a story about the tragedy. Is it Kanchijunga?
Hold on. I have the pronunciation.
Oh.
Somewhere.
Over the rainbow.
Okay. Yeah, it's pronounced how it's
spelled.
Yes.
So Kanchijunga, where 4 of his fellow climbers were killed in an avalanche. It is said that he told them that the route that they were taking was going to be deadly. In fact, he ignored the cries for help from the survivors. Excuse me. Do you have something to add to that?
Yes. So, Kachinjunga is labeled as one of the most treacherous mountains in the world. They reached 25,000 feet successfully, but one of the men on the expedition, Jules Jacko Guillermo, was a photographer, and he was furious with Crowley over how he was treating everyone, and he wanted to take over the expedition. The other members of the expedition party began to argue that Crowley was being reckless, and the group eventually mutinied against Crowley's control and began to head back down the mountain. But nightfall was approaching, and Crowley warned that it was too dangerous to continue. And several of the climbers were killed in an accident, and subsequently Crowley was blamed by the mountaineering community. And it was claimed that Crowley sat inside of his tent and attempted to summon a demon. And at that moment, an avalanche came down the mountain. It was said that they screamed for help, but Crowley ignored them and left them for dead. Later, he wrote that he had no sympathy for the unfortunate accident, even though many of the men did survive. And it should also be noted that Crowley refused to use harnesses or any other safety equipment when he was climbing because he saw that as a sign of weakness.
All right. So
I got that from last podcast.
There you go. Now, let's get back to the part where I told you that his dad was an evangelist. Even though he was raised very religious, he found himself turning from the Christian faith fairly young. He began to start to point out all the inconsistencies in the Bible at school and would defy certain Christian defy Christian values by partaking in acts such as masturbating, smoking, and having the sex with the prostitutes.
Yes. And so when he came back from the stay with his uncle, this was when he really started to reject those religious teachings. And it's said that the first thing he did to really be wicked, because his mother was just totally shocked by the change in him, and that it said that he had become the beast from the book of Revelation.
Right, and that because I put that in mind, that brought him joy that she called him that.
Yeah. But one of the first wicked things he did was to have sex with the maid on his mother's bed, just to spite her. When his mother discovered this, she fired the maid immediately and ruined her reputation to the point where she could no longer find work. And the maid was forced into prostitution, and Crowley claimed that she was Jack the Ripper's first victim. And he also claimed to have known the Ripper personally and said that he was also an occultist.
Well, at this point, with all this being said, like she just said, he found himself looking into occultism. In 1898, he joined the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn after he met a chemist named Julian L. Baker. This order was devoted to studying paranormal activity and all things occult. He later hired another member of the group to be his personal mentor. And I think I read in yours that they didn't like that. They were saying that you couldn't pay another member.
Yes, that was one of the rules. Hold on, let me find it.
So while she's looking for that, he paid this mentor to help him, and they experimented with ceremonial magic and ritualistic use of drugs.
That's pretty much it. But yeah, it was like, it was a higher up member, and he allowed him to live with him in exchange for giving him lessons.
Got you. He was denied entry into the upper levels of the order, though, as the higher level members deemed him to be too libertine. In 1902, Crowley, I was right.
You can say whatever, however, whichever one you want.
Crowley found himself to be bored in his current location and traveled to Paris, where he would immerse himself in the art world. It was there that he met painter Gerald Kelly, who introduced him to his sister Rose Kelly. Aleister fell in love, and the two were married. At first, the marriage was one of convenience to keep her from having to partake in an arranged marriage, but to the surprise of many, the two fell in love for real. Crowley even took time off from writing profane and dark writings and constructed several poems of love for his wife. The two were absolutely perfect for each other. Rose would go along with him on his journeys and schemes, and because of her, he was inspired to start his own religion. She told him that while she was meditating, she was informed that the Egyptian god Horus was waiting for him. In 1904, Crowley found himself experiencing mystical things on his trip to Egypt. He told about them in his book, The Book of Law, which was a prose poem which he claimed was dictated to him by a discarnate being called Awus. In this poem, he came out with his most famous lesson: "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." Even though this was not a new thing, he made this the basis of a new religion that he called Thelema. Thelema was the Greek word for will. The Book of Law was adopted by the Ordo Templi Orientis as scripture. This was a mystical group that originated from Germany. Crowley soon found his own order in 1907. In 1909, he began dispersing his teaching in the periodical, dispersing his teaching in the periodical, The Equinox, with his assistant J.F.C. Fuller, who would later be known as a historian and military strategist. Now, while all this was taking off, and he was consumed by his teachings, his wife started down the dark path of full-blown alcoholism. During this time, they had a daughter that they named Lilith, which is all too perfect for this.
Right.
Who died in 1906 of typhoid. Crowley blamed Lilith's death on Rose, stating that she was unable to get a grip on the world around her. Rose and Aleister had yet another daughter named Lola, despite Rose's failure to remain sober. The two got divorced in 1909, and Lola was given to Rose to raise on her own. In 1911, Rose was admitted into an institution.
Yeah, for, my source said neurological damage from her alcoholism.
But, like, nothing I read told what happened to Lola at this point.
So, my source said that he left her in the care of boarding schools and nannies. Because he had no interest in being a father.
That's great. And here's where my reaction will be completely raw, so brace yourselves.
So I'm going to wind it back a little bit to October 1897, when Aleister Crowley was only 22 years old, and he met and fell in love with fellow classmate Herbert Jerome Pollitt, who had an alter ego, and very few people at Cambridge knew this. He dressed in drag in private nightclubs as Diane de Rougy.
For shame!
They met in October. They broke up before Christmas. Wrote yearning letters to one another over the holidays.
Aleister just didn't want to buy a Christmas present.
Right. And then became lovers on New Year's Eve.
See?
An event recorded by Crowley as admitted to permanent office in the temple, midnight, December 31st, 1897. And just after just a few short months, it was all over.
Was it before Valentine's Day?
I have no idea. And I mean, did they celebrate Valentine's Day back then? I don't know. But and last podcast, like, they did like they bless their hearts because they read his work.
Is this one of those gold star episodes?
No, it's not, I wouldn't say it's a gold star, but he described, because he was a bottom, he was a power bottom, and described it as a very spiritual experience, and that it really heightened his magical being a bottom. So Crowley would later write, Pollitt was rather plain than otherwise. His face was made tragic by the terrible hunger of the eyes and the bitter sadness of the mouth. He possessed one physical beauty, his hair.
That's why he wanted to be the bottom, so he didn't have to look at him.
Right. Its color was pale gold, like spring sunshine, and its texture of the finest gossamer. The relation between us was that ideal intimacy which the Greeks considered the greatest glory of manhood and the most precious prize of life. It was also through his relationship with Pollitt that Crowley would meet famed writer Oscar Wilde, because there was a group of what was described as dandies that included Oscar Wilde, who was pretty famously a homosexual, even though he tried to deny it, I guess. But Crowley would have a pretty fierce feud with Oscar Wilde, but it was one-sided. Crowley wrote a lot about his dislike of Wilde and how he thought Wilde became gay to influence his career in the 1800s. But there is absolutely no documented evidence that Wilde felt one way or the other about Aleister Crowley. That Crowley would write love poems about Herbert, and then they would be filled with anguish about his wish to be with him. This realization of bisexuality was even more motivation for Crowley to reject Christianity, because in the eyes of the church, his love for Herbert was considered an abomination. Crowley wrote many love poems expressing his anguish over the crumbling of his relationship with Pollitt, including, my body was sick in his love lies drowned, and he lies corpse-wise on me, nor will rise, though my breath shudders and my soul be dead. And this was included in a tiny notebook of unpublished manuscript poems that resurfaced in about 2014. And after he left Cambridge, Crowley inherited the Crowley family fortune of approximately $7 million in today's money, and could now go anywhere and do whatever he wanted. So he began to hire female prostitutes almost daily and bought books on the occult. He was writing dirty poetry and publishing it overseas under a pen name. And in his early 20s, he discovered that he was not alone in his fascination of the occult and the thought that magic might be real. And this was when he joined the Order of the Golden Dawn, which also included William Butler Yeats, who was a famous poet, and Bram Stoker of Dracula fame. And this group believed that they could perform real magic and communicate with angels and get to know their inner soul. And at the first meeting that he attended of the Order of the Golden Dawn, Crowley was wearing a disguise and introduced himself as Count Vladimir Zverev, due to his fear that his family would discover his dalliances into the occult, and he did not want his reputation ruined. But no one in the meeting was convinced, because he was a baby-faced young man wearing a fake mustache and speaking in an awful Russian accent. And also, apparently, during World War I, Crowley became a secret agent for the British government, because he claimed that he had successfully infiltrated a secret society, being the Golden Dawn. And technically it is true, but the source that I said described it, it said his spy career was more like the Pink Panther and less like James Bond. But Crowley for sure thought he was like a James Bond type.
Yes.
After being assured that the society took privacy seriously, he revealed his true identity. But starting out in the group with a lie led many of the members to find it very hard to trust him. And Crowley so fiercely believed in the supernatural that he believed that the early lessons of the Order of the Golden Dawn were critical to his magical journey, which would get him in touch with his guardian angel. And he openly discussed his desire to call upon demons and ancient gods as well. He used psychedelic drugs in his routines because he believed that it intensified his spiritual experiences, which was concerning to the rest of the Golden Dawn. I think you mentioned that they didn't particularly care for that.
Right.
And because many of them were teetotaling aristocrats who felt that Crowley's ideas were radical, if not totally terrifying. And members did not want Crowley to rise in the ranks of the society because of his interest in black magic and their belief that he would use his powers for evil. In his writing, he mentions that he walked in on his roommate who he had been giving free room and board in exchange for lessons. He walked in on this roommate levitating as if it was a totally normal thing for members of the Golden Dawn to be doing.
Okay.
And in 1899, when he was just 24 years old, Crowley purchased a mansion on the shores of Loch Ness in Scotland and called it Boleskine House, just so he could perform a spell called the Abramelin ceremony. But nothing ever actually happened, and he never saw any angels or demons despite his best efforts. And he grew tired of doing this ritual daily without seeing any results, so he just wandered off to do something else. And rumors were spreading that since he had failed to finish the ceremony, he had unwittingly unlocked the gates of hell. And years later, lead guitarist for Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page, purchased Boleskine House, and he claims that the house was truly haunted by Crowley's demons. And then I know you briefly mentioned his trip to Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
So that was their honeymoon, his and Rose's honeymoon. And Crowley took Rose into a dark cave and began reciting his spells from a book called Goethe, the Lesser Key of Solomon. His idea being that he would summon the Egyptian god Horus, and he said he went through his chant when Rose's head suddenly fell back. She claimed that in that moment she had a vision and heard the voice of Horus. Crowley was frustrated with her because he assumed that she was playing a joke on him. He had been attempting to summon angels and demons for years, and they had never given him any vision. So he found it impossible to believe that Rose would evoke Horus when she wasn't even the one trying. She insisted that she truly did see something in the caves, and that the gods had been angry with him up to that point because of his arrogance. Which, fair.
Right.
Crowley still refused to believe her and took her to a museum and requested that she point out the god she saw. She walked right up to the image of Horus in exhibit number 666.
Ugh.
After she had proven what she had seen, they rushed back to their apartment in Cairo so that they could discuss the visions in private. She said that Horus had given her instructions on how to communicate with the spirits and gave Crowley a spiritual ritual to perform. When he completed the ritual, he heard a whisper from over his shoulder from the voice of his guardian angel, Iowas. The angel instructed him to write down lots of information over the course of 3 days, which is what he published into the text that he called the Book of Law. Like you said, the most famous quote from that book was, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." And this was essentially, do whatever you want. And Crowley was thrilled with this revelation, and when he returned to England, he told all of his friends in the Golden Dawn about the voices he and Rose had heard while in Egypt. Many members were reluctant to believe him, some even being angry and believing that he had been tricked and was communicating with a demon rather than his guardian angel. At this point, the Golden Dawn were still not allowing him to graduate to the next level, and so he visited with the leader of the parish chapter of the Golden Dawn, MacGregor Mathers. In his meeting, he explained the situation in London, and Mathers agreed that Crowley deserved to graduate to the next level. And upon his return to London with his certificate from Mathers in hand, the other members still refused to accept him. With this, he snuck into the clubhouse and changed the locks, and the next day, when the other men failed to get inside, Crowley laughed at them. And this action caused him to be officially kicked out of the Order of the Golden Dawn. And then he went on that expedition with where a bunch of people died. And then, let's see, he and Rose had a second child named Lola Zaza. But they got divorced in 1909, and they cited his adultery as the problem. Let's see. But this his divorce from and subsequent committing of Rose seemed to be the beginning of a trend, as most people who had a close personal relationship with Crowley ended up with their lives being totally ruined. It's a question of whether his involvement with the occult attracted those with mental illness to him, or was it his pure wickedness that was enough to drive a person just totally mad. And like I said earlier, because he had no interest in being a father, Crowley left Lola Zaza in the care of boarding schools and nannies, and after that, I don't know what happened to her. But this was when he started his own cult called the Thelema, where he taught the Book of Law like it was the Bible. He started a commune at a villa in Italy that he called the Abbey of Thelema. Everyone who lived there was encouraged to do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. This included drug use, orgies, and children were often seen running around the grounds naked. And according to last podcast, it was also not frowned upon to have relations with children.
Oh.
Yeah.
You said orgies, and all I can think about is...
I forgot about that. I forgot about that. So, quick interjection. My granny, she used to go down to our local senior center, and they would do dances and all kinds of stuff. Well, she's down there with one of her friends, and somehow the topic of orgies came up. And her friend goes, "What's an orgy?" And my granny, without missing a beat, goes, "Oh, it's where you throw your shoes in a pile and then y'all have to dig and find your shoes."
But she called it orgies.
Yeah, it was orgies.
Yeah. That was the best
Because I think they had, she had read the word and didn't hear somebody say orgy. She just read it, and it looks like orgy.
I swear to you, I see the word, and all I can hear,
you put your shoes in a pile.
And you put your shoes in a pile.
So, anyway. So the orgies, children running around naked, it's not super frowned upon to, like I said, have relations with kids. And one of the rooms of the villa was called the Nightmare Room, where Crowley had painted terrifying pictures on the walls. He encouraged his followers to take LSD and stare at the frightening images until they completely lost fear of everything.
I wonder if that was effective, because that to me just sounds like
that
torture.
Sounds horrifying. The neighbors of the commune were shocked, and to this day, the locals say that the place is haunted by a curse. Rumor has it that the rituals became more and more intense to the point where members of the commune participated in bestiality and animal sacrifice.
I'm like trying not to gag.
After her stay at the commune, one of Aleister's lovers, named Leah, had a nervous breakdown, and she went straight to the British press claiming that one of the other followers, which the sources were a bit muddled, but one said it was her husband, another said it was just another follower, but one of the other followers had died after drinking the blood of a cat. The article that was written in the British magazine, John Bull, dubbed Crowley the wickedest man in the world, and the Italian authorities then came into the house and forced the group out and banned them from ever returning to Italy. And the Abbey of Thelema remains abandoned to this day, with locals claiming that it is haunted.
Oh, I bet.
After this, Aleister Crowley then traveled to the United States, where he wanted to spread the word on Thelema, and he inspired several people to practice the occult as well, including rocket scientist Jack Parsons, and the founder of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard.
That explains so much.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah. Crowley taught them how to perform sex magic, which is the belief that in the moment of orgasm, their intentions could be heard by the universe.
Now listen, I've heard that sex magic is like...
legit. Yeah. It's legitness.
I myself have never tried, but...
No. Unfortunately, all of the drugs and sex caught up to Crowley, and he developed a full-blown heroin addiction and lost a tremendous amount of weight. We will post pictures on our socials of Aleister Crowley if you're interested in seeing. He was quite handsome as a young feller. In the 1930s, a journalist labeled Crowley as a black magician, and after years of running cults and buying properties all over the world, the inheritance money had finally run out. And Crowley was living alone in a boarding house doing whatever he could to get his fix and stay alive. He then decided to sue the journalist for libel, and even though he had called himself a magician and the beast in his own books for years, he lost the case and had to endure public humiliation. Many people never saw him in London again, and a rumor spread that he had died from a drug overdose all alone in his boarding house, which is what almost all of my sources said, except for the YouTube video that I'm linking. It was felt by, the community that that was the fitting end to such a wicked man, but fate apparently gave him a second chance at life. A young woman named Deirdre McClellan approached Crowley after his trial was over, and she said that she had read all of his books and was a huge fan of his work and wanted to have a child. This sort of proposition would normally be enough to make any run-of-the-mill celebrity bolt in the opposite direction, but for Aleister Crowley, he was so desperate that he agreed to go home with this stranger. And McClellan helped him to get clean from drugs, and she stayed with him through the worst of his withdrawals. After he was healthy again, they had a son together that they named Aleister Ataturk Crowley. Little Aleister was Crowley's pride and joy, and he felt a lot of regret for the way he had been in his younger years. He had spent his entire life to that point trying to prove that people should be as selfish as they possibly could be, and he finally realized that true happiness and fulfillment came from family. The little family lived in a house in Cornwall where they spent their summers on the beach. According to Deirdre, Crowley slipped into a coma just before he died. She said that the sky lit up in a cacophony of thunder as the gods came to reclaim his soul. He died in 1947 at the age of 72, and he died from chronic bronchitis aggravated by pleurisy and a myocardial degeneration. However, all other sources indicate that he died in Hastings at a boarding house, alone and still addicted to heroin. His funeral was held at Brighton Crematorium, and about a dozen people attended, and Lewis Wilkinson read excerpts from the Gnostic Mass, the Book of Law, and Hymn to Pan. The funeral was labeled as a black mass by the tabloids. Years after his death, artists and musicians from all over the world started to read Aleister's work, and it inspired them to live their lives the way they wanted. And hippies based their free love movement on his teachings. And even John Lennon considered him to be a hero and had him included on the cover of the Beatles album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club. His motto, "Do what thou wilt," was inscribed on the vinyl of Led Zeppelin's album, Led Zeppelin 3. David Bowie made a reference to Crowley in the lyrics of his song Quicksand, which David Bowie is somebody that I would like to revisit in the future because he was also an occultist. And Ozzy Osbourne has a song called Mr. Crowley. His life was filled with outrageous claims, and without his attempts to shake up Victorian society, the world we live in today may not have been the same without Aleister Crowley. Despite all of the screwed up stuff he did.
I mean, he's a very messed up individual.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't labeled the wickedest man in the world for nothing.
Right. I'm just kind of
letting it sink in.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know that it... Now, there is a picture of him with a small boy on a beach. But I don't know if he actually was the father of this child. I don't know. But I could not find much else on, like, a second shot at life. Because everything else said he died alone, addicted to heroin. But he was crazy.
Bitches be crazy.
I forgot. I didn't even read. He was the titles under his belt: novelist, yoga enthusiast, heroin addict, occultist, sexual adventurer, magician, possibly spy, and an enthusiastic mountaineer.
Secret agent.
I'm an international super spy.
Super spy!
So that is Aleister Crowley. And if you want, like, I don't know if anybody that I've ever said, hey, listen to the last podcast on the left, has ever actually done it. But episodes 442, 443, and 444 are all about Aleister Crowley. If you want to hear all of the stuff that we might have missed, because there's a lot, and they do really, really good research.
Last podcast on the left is really good about getting like a wide scope of every story that they cover.
Yes.
I don't listen to that podcast normally, because I'm the type of person that, like, if I'm going to start listening to a podcast, I'm going to start at the beginning and work my way through. And
see,
like you just said, 400 and something episodes later, I don't have time for that.
But yeah. And also, like, their first, I think it's like 32 or 35 episodes are not available. They were so bad that they have pulled them from the internet.
Maybe we should look into that later on.
But, and also, like, their ideologies have changed over the course of hundreds of episodes. So, like, if you like dudes who are just, like, edgelords and trying to be, like, problematic for the sake of shock value, their first, like, 100 to maybe 200 episodes are probably perfect for you.
Right.
But they have changed as individuals, I think. And
they have...
And they're especially, like, I think Marcus is just the best. He's an excellent writer, and he's got that radio voice.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can stomach it,
They've
podcast
got,
is great.
you heard me reference, is this one of those Gold Star episodes? So they've got episodes that are referred to as Gold Star episodes that, like, they're hard to get through. Hard.
Like, they did, so the one that I've made it through all of the Gold Star episodes, but the one that I will never, like, go back and revisit is the Toy Box Killer. I will never. That was the most vile. I just even just thinking about it, I'm like,
and these are episodes that you will not get from us.
No.
When we say this is a Gold Star episode, we mean that this is going to be
hard
as hell to listen to because
we're annoying.
Yes.
But,
pick
like,
your poison. That's all I got to say. If you haven't listened to Pick Your Poison, if you're new to this podcast, if you want to know what I'm talking about when I say we are having a Gold Star episode today, Pick Your Poison is the perfect episode for you to listen to.
Danny keeps going, when are you going to do that again? And I'm like,
never.
Never, ever. That was awful.
Never.
But
I think my laptop has, like, a virus or something, because a black screen keeps popping up, like the DOS, you know what I'm talking about, where you have to, like, type in the codes and stuff like that.
Oh.
Yeah. That's great. That's cool, because I don't do anything personal other than podcast stuff on this laptop anyway, so...
So I've got the nonprofit of the week.
Yeah.
Which is Community Spirit Inc. And Community Spirit Inc. is a nonprofit community organization dedicated to bringing quality educational theatrical productions to Robertson County, Tennessee.
Oh.
And the surrounding areas. We provide professional, historically accurate entertainment the whole family can enjoy. Community Spirit is operated entirely by volunteers who have a love for the arts and the community. We are an organization that operates from grants, donations, and fundraising. We are passionate about what we put forth to the community, and it is our desire that you will return to see the same quality production year after year and make it part of your family tradition. Which, I picked this because last year, I got to go to the Bell Witch Festival, and they put on a production called Spirit every year. They do 3. They do Red River Tales, Spirit, and Smoke. And Spirit is about the Bell Witch, and this is the company that helps put that on every year. I didn't realize, like, last year was the 20th year anniversary of the Bell Witch Festival, and I was like, I had no idea that this was even a thing. And I'm looking forward to going again this year. It's in Adams, Tennessee, which I really want to do the Bell Witch at October for sure.
Y'all have no idea how excited I am about the spooky months of the year.
Right.
Like, because we only release an episode a week, spooky season may start early for this podcast.
I think spooky season should start in September.
I'm here for it. And it may even go through November. I don't know.
It probably will.
I'm here for it.
It's always spooky season around here.
I mean,
but
fair.
I want to get, like, spooky season vibes during, like,
we
September
may have to
and
look
October.
for a new intro music just for that time period.
Oh my gosh. You're right.
Doing it. So, any of our listeners that are musically inclined, if you want to come up with some kind of spooky sound and intro for us.
Right.
Do it.
That is not us.
Do it. Send it to us. We will be more than happy to put it out there and put your name out there.
Right.
If you want us to. If you just want to do it anonymously, let us know. That's cool too.
But I also included a link where you can donate directly to. It's on the bellwitchfestival.com.
Awesome.
So I'm excited.
Well, There was a Aleister Crowley for you guys.
Yeah.
There you go.
I hope we did it justice. It was very difficult because, like, and also too, like, last podcast noted in their episode, or episodes, we're not even entirely sure if the information we have on Aleister Crowley's early life is true.
Facts.
Because all we have is his word.
Right.
And he was not exactly honest.
Right.
And like they said, the only reason why we know about his later life stuff is because there were other people there.
Right.
But, like, we don't, for all we know, he killed his dad. We don't know.
That came out of nowhere. I was not prepared.
But yeah. So we don't even know if any of that's true. Maybe he wasn't even a bottom. Who knows?
I bet he was.
Probably.
Not that being a bottom is a negative thing.
No.
But somebody who boasts to be so powerful.
Right.
The bottom was not where you would assume that they would be.
I think he was surprised by that as well.
I can't say that the thought. Never mind.
Who we telling this week?
I don't know. I don't know. Parker, Nighthawk. I hope that this episode was all that you hoped it would be.
Thank you for suggesting it, Nighthawk. That was nice.
See, there goes that screen again. What is it?
You got a virus.
Probably.
You over there getting...
Anyway, let's tell... I don't know, guys.
We both just looking around the room for inspiration.
Right.
There's a lot of movies in theaters this weekend, and next weekend I'm going to see Haunted Mansion. So when you go to the movie, be sure and tell the person giving you
your tickets.
Well,
a lot of people buy them online.
Tell the person you're ordering your popcorn from.
There you go. There you go. I like it. We just went to the movie last weekend. For Easton's birthday weekend, we went to see the new Transformers movie.
I didn't even know there was a new Transformers movie.
It was very good. I don't even remember. It's like something about the Beast or something, but it was like... I don't follow the Transformer movies. Like, I've watched the majority of them.
I don't know nothing about Transformers.
But...
I know Decepticons and whatever the other one is.
Autobots.
Ooh.
Autobots.
A former friend of ours would be super disappointed in me right now.
I didn't even think about that. But yeah,
I've gotten so far away from that life that I have just totally forgotten. Like,
that version of you is no longer valid.
She doesn't exist.
No. But yeah, it was pretty good. We had a great time. Easton actually sat and watched a good portion of the movie.
Nice. What do you do for the rest of it?
Yeah, he whispered to talk to Dad and wiggled a little bit. He's 6, so
yeah,
Gemma did really good. She watched it. Maddie was at her dad's, or with her dad. I think they were in Panama City.
Nice.
But it was pretty good. We did have one guy that was like sitting kind of behind me that was like commentating the whole movie.
Oh, I hate that.
And I was like, it took all of me to keep from turning around and being like, shut the up. And then there was a guy in front of us that prior to the movie starting, like, it was just us and him, this guy and his girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, I don't know, she's over there bouncing her knee, but they were like talking or whatever. And he was like, you have anxiety. And she was like, I don't have anxiety. And he was like, I'm telling you, you do. And then he picks his phone up and he goes, Siri, what are the symptoms of anxiety? And then Siri starts going off, or whoever the fuck. Damn it.
Gotcha.
We made it all through the episode. Whoever on his phone it is, Google, whoever. But
don't be saying that G word too loud in this house.
But he picked his phone up and said that, and it starts listing out the signs and symptoms of anxiety, and it even said symptoms or, signs and symptoms vary in everybody. Like, it's different for everybody.
Right.
And he was like, see, I told you, you've got anxiety. And she was like, I don't have anxiety. It's literally different for everyone.
Right.
And that's not me. And like, I just, it was irking me because he was like demanding that she had anxiety. And then she finally looks over.
Gaslighting him
right.
into believing
she was like, she finally looked at him and was like, you don't get to tell me if I have anxiety or not. You're not a doctor.
Get him, girl.
And I was like, yes.
Get him.
But yeah, so it was a good movie. Then we went to Dave & Buster's.
Nice.
And then we went to...
So you went to Aubrey Mills.
Yeah. And then we went over to the candy store, and they had runts.
I'm going to go to the AMC in Bellevue.
Oh, with the comfy chairs.
Kick my little feet up.
Right.
Get my little popcorn.
We went to Aubrey Mills because he wanted to go to an arcade, so we took him to Dave & Buster's.
It was for his birthday.
Yeah.
So.
And then we went to the candy store, and they had runts, because, we've been on the hunt for runts for forever.
I look everywhere I go.
And they're never anywhere.
Yeah.
We found that one place in Panama City that has them, and so my in-laws were also in Panama City last weekend, and they went to that store and bought, 8 boxes of runts and brought them back. But he got this big bag of runts. And this guy, walked up over to that same area that we were in, and he was like, that's a lot. And TJ was like, TJ goes, yeah, I can't find them anywhere. This is literally the only local place we've been able to find them. And the dude's like, really? And he's like, yeah, so I get all I can when I can.
Right.
But yeah, so then we left there, ate dinner, came home.
Nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm planning on... So, the Barbie movie came out this weekend, and Oppenheimer, if you're into nuclear disaster films. It's based on...
Who's in that?
Oh, it's got that guy from... Crap.
I feel like I saw the previews for it, and I was like, I really like him.
Oppenheimer or Barbie?
Oppenheimer.
Oh. But yeah, he's the guy who created the nuclear bomb we dropped on Hiroshima.
Hold on, I'm about to look it up. Ooh. Matt Damon. Cillian Murphy.
Oh, yeah.
Emily Blunt, Matt Damon.
It's Killian.
Whatever. Killian. I said Cillian. Yeah. What the heck? Okay.
I only know because we have a customer who has a son, and she was like, I know it's kind of weird, but it's it's Scottish.
Yeah.
And she was like, but it's Killian. And I was like, okay, so now whenever I see it, I just, it's Killian.
Right. But yeah. So, anyway.
But yeah, I'm going to go see the Haunted Mansion next weekend.
Oh, I want to go.
I'm so excited.
I want to go.
I told Danny, he was like, I said, you want to go? And he was like, I mean, I can. I was like, you don't have to. I'm not going to pay for a ticket if you don't want to go. And he was like, well, what are you going to do? I said, go by myself. And he was like, why would you do that? I was like, because I can do things by myself. And
that's a big thing. That's a big deal.
Yeah. As I used to not be able to do that.
Right.
But I was like, yeah, I'll just go by myself, and then I'll hit up Home Goods after. And he was like, or I could take you and drop you off at least. And I was like, you don't got to do that. You got to work on your car. I was like, I'll just go. I think he just wants to use my car to go where he's going. And I'm like, because he doesn't want to use his truck because it uses so much gas.
Right.
And so I think he wants to take me to the movies. This way, whenever we get back, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm going to be home. So he can take my car. Because that's what he did tonight. He was like, so, are you planning on going anywhere else tonight?
Right.
And I was like, no, I'm not. You just take my car. It's fine. Get all your crap out of it.
You've been found out, Daniel.
Yeah.
Found out.
So anyway.
So share it with, what did we say? The person at the where you get your popcorn.
Yeah, giving you your popcorn at the movies.
And then
you need to follow us
on Facebook,
Instagram,
TikTok,
Twitter.
Email us at
wanderersofweird@gmail.com.
I got it that time.
There you go. You got to get that little sultry voice.
Gmail.com.
Reel them in with your sultriness. That's how we get listeners around here.
Right.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye.